Hi, there's a YouTuber named Wolfwing that is, who posts a good amount of videos. He's a atheist. He posts a lot of videos that present atheist arguments. If you are an atheist, that is a channel that you should probably check out. I'm not an atheist. I'm a theist, but I still do watch a lot of atheist videos on YouTube. I watch Pat Condell and Thunderfoot and Wolfwing and lots of others, just because I like to think about all that stuff that's being charged against my religion, as well as a lot of other people's religion. But he had this one video that was called something like, "If the design needs a designer, then who designed these?" And he in that video he was talking, and he had these pictures that were really pretty awesome looking patterns. But he said that he didn't really make them. He didn't make them, but he put mathematical equations or algorithms or essentially mathematical sentences into a certain program that he has, which generates this pattern. Most of them are pretty cool looking patterns. They're pretty neat and diverse. So I'm going to post his channel down here. So I recommend that you go check him out. He has a lot of good videos there, especially if you're an atheist. But yeah, that video, he said that he didn't make any of this. He said who designed these. If the design requires a designer, as per a lot of arguments in the philosophy of religion, then who designed these? And he said that he just puts mathematical sentences into a certain program, and boom, you have all these patterns and such. All these cool different things. I just go look at it. It's actually pretty neat. But what I'm thinking about is there's possible question. There's possible answer to who designed these, because if essentially what is being said here is that mathematics, all those equations and algorithms boiled down to just numbers. They boil down to numbers, and formulations of certain numbers. That's really all that those boil down to. Take for instance this graph here. This is the sine x graph. There's various trigonometric functions like cosine, tangent, cotangent, and yeah, I haven't taken trig in a long time, so that's my knowledge on trig. But essentially, any equation that you have, if it's an equation, then it's going to either if you have a two variable equation, like it would be sine x equals y, that you can have an xy output thing, and you can basically graph out the whole thing, and you would get something like this. That's not a very good drawing of it, but that's basically how it is. Cosine will be a little bit different than that, but that's essentially what that boils down to. The function of sine boils down to simple numbers. It boils down to the function of sine is just formulations of numbers, and they're put together in a certain way, and that's essentially what all these algorithms and functions and equations are. That's really all they are, really. So the question is, who designed those things? Who designs the sine function that you put in a x and y graph? That's the real question, So that makes me think, essentially, mathematics is what creates these. Mathematics creates those patterns that Wolfwing has on that program. He puts colors in there, but the patterns are all from mathematics. They're all from the mathematical numbers, just formulated in certain ways and arranged in certain ways into certain functions and algorithms. But that's really all it boils down to, is certain numbers, thus mathematics. So I think there could be certain answers to this question: who designed these? And that would be, that would lead you to a awesome and wonderful branch of philosophy called the philosophy of mathematics, which I have a playlist on. I have like 15 videos in that playlist. I'll probably put this one in that. But philosophy of mathematics is basically a culmination of philosophy of epistemology, language, and metaphysics. Those are three branches of philosophy, and philosophy of mathematics is kind of. I think it's best to have a good understanding of those three before you move on to philosophy of mathematics. But this is a very interesting thing, and thus, I mean, there's various theories in philosophy of mathematics. So basically, the question is, where do numbers come from? What are they? And it's simple, metaphysics. There's realism and anti-realism in metaphysics, and there's idealist epistemologies. So basically, there's the realism. There's realism in philosophy of mathematics, which is essentially there's various kinds, but I'm going to refer to the this is the Platonistic one. That's the essential one that you hear about, the forms, the abstracta. Yeah, mathematical objects are abstract. That's Platonistic. There's various ones that basically say mathematical objects either are or exist in physical objects, or and then there's more complex ones by Mill, which is Millian set theoretic and Millian mereological realism. So essentially, I'm going to refer to the reductionistic Aristotelian and the Platonistic realisms, which is essentially overall is saying that mathematics essentially are physical objects. Like that's essentially saying that if I have two bottles, those two things together referring to Plato, having two bottles is just it's an instantiation of two from the abstract of two, from the abstract of couples. So that's where that comes from, or having two bottles is just a instantiation of having two. So going back to what what mathematics are, with realism, it's essentially saying that mathematics are in real things. Mathematics are real and are in the concreta. So really, if you're going to ask who designs the sine function, which is essentially numbers, or who designs those things that Wolfwing puts in his program or such, that is going to hinge on fire alarm's going off. So essentially, if we're gonna go by realism in ontology, and that's saying that mathematics come from this abstracta or physical objects. Comes from all that. So then you're going to have to ask who creates those physical objects, and then the answer to the question of who designed these is going to be based on your theory of religion, or your theory of evolution, or how the world comes to be. So if you're going to be a realist in the philosophy of mathematics, you're going to have to answer the question who designs those patterns, or who designs the sine function on a x and y graph. You're going to have to that's going to hinge on what your theory of the world is, based on if you're going to have a view of creationism. That's essentially going to mean that God basically designed those. Or if your theory of how the world came about is um, the Big Bang and evolution and such is going to be the same reason that you're going to have for everything else. Um, there's lots of people like that, and they have the Big Bang theorists and the evolution theorists. They have a answer for how everything came about in this idea of mathematics. It's just going to be, or how all these patterns come about from algorithms. It's just going to be another answer for it. I'm not sure exactly what it would be. It's just going to be that it'll just be probably just that it's a consequence of everything that exists. So nobody really created it. And I would assume that since Wolfwing does put up a lot of good atheist content, that he would have the idea of something having to do with evolutionism and Big Bang theorism. So I mean, that would be one answer for it, and I think that's what he was saying, is that nobody really created them; they were just a consequence of everything else that exists, and that nobody really created that either. So if you're going to be a realist in mathematics, then that's going to bring you towards the whole philosophy of religion, or philosophy of how all this came about kind of debate. However, if you're going to go about idealism is idealist epistemology is really that it's all in our head. That everything I'm seeing is a representation of something, or it's just all in my head, or there's various theories of that. There's the intersubjective idealism in philosophy of mathematics, which says that mathematics and numbers and such are fabrications of everything that we all see. That's all mental, but it's mental for all of us, or it's subjective. That mathematical objects like numbers are caused by one person. It's caused by a mathematician. So if we're going to go by essentially idealism, the idea that mathematics and numbers and such come from the mind, it's all mental, then that would have to be the idea that we created the sine function. We created those patterns that where you put an algorithm in that program, and thus you get all these patterns. There would be a designer for that, thus us, or one mathematician. Then there is anti-realism. It says there's the Aristotelian fictionalist anti-realism, which says that mathematical objects, i.e. numbers, don't exist, but physical objects are approximations. That's saying that I'm not sure what this would mean. And then there's the nihilist anti-realism, which says mathematical objects do not exist. Now, if mathematical objects do not exist, there is a explanation for how they are there, i.e. there's language, spoken word, as to how mathematics gets there, or objects as approximations, even though they don't really exist. So that would essentially mean that if it's language, then language is really comes from us. Then that would be us creating that again. But if it's mathematical objects do not exist, but physical objects are approximations, then that comes back to where did these physical objects come from? And that's creationism or atheism or whatever. So there is an answer for who designed those patterns, or who designed the sine function, the cosine function, or the tangent function. There's all answers for it, but it hinges on these philosophy of mathematics, and that will possibly take you to your idea of what your philosophy of religion is, or what your theory of how this world came about is. So there is an answer for it, it just all depends on what your idea. First, there is an answer for how the sign function, how the sign function is designed, or how those patterns that Wolfwing makes by the algorithms, which are pre-made, come about. It all hinges on, first, what your idea of mathematical objects are, and that could possibly bring you to, depending on what that first thing is, what is your idea of how the world comes about? Is it, God, creationism, or is it or is it atheism, Big Bang, evolution, that sort of thing? So it's either going to be we created it, within the idealist or the linguistic nihilist thing. So it's either we created it, God created it, or it's just a consequence of everything else that exists, or there could be possible other explanations. But that seems to be all of what could explain who designed those. So I decided to make a response just because philosophy of mathematics is very very interesting. So there is a good answer. It just depends on what your theories are. It depends on how you view mathematical objects, and quite possibly how you view the world, and where it came from.